I got to ask you, what the heck is 3I Atlas, and why the clouds of mystery around it? NASA's like tight-lipped.
Well, there's a split in the astronomical community. The majority faction says, what's all the fuss about? I mean, it's just a rock from outer space, and it's going to come through our solar system for the first time and then come whizzing back out again. It's the third known object from outside our solar system, so what's the fuss? Another faction, however, says, now, wait a minute. Perhaps this is a visitor, an intelligent visitor from another solar system, and perhaps this week we could have a test of it. That's right. This week, it turns out that the asteroid or comet will be whizzing around our sun, and if it picks up extra energy on its flyby, that would clinch it. That means there's extraterrestrial intelligence involved. So watch for it. On October 30th, starting then, we're going to track it to see whether it gets an extra boost of energy. If so, it means we are being visited.
Oh, so, okay, if it's not a giant rock, and it could be a sign of life out there, something's got to be steering it, right?
That's right. And as it goes around the sun, there's something called the Oberth effect. The Oberth effect says that if you were to whip around the sun, you would pick up extra energy in the process. So we're going to watch for it. The energy in must equal the energy out, according to the ordinary theory. But if that's not true, if there's more energy going out than in, it means that there's energy boost coming from whipping around the sun, and that requires intelligence. And so that's one acid test that we can make. Watch for it starting this week. We're going to begin to monitor and see whether or not it picks up extra energy as it whips around the sun.
So it's Wednesday, right? October 29th, I think it goes the closest point to the sun. Is that right?
That's right. That's the perihelion.
Okay.
And at that point, if it picks up extra energy, that's outside the ordinary bounds of the conservation of energy. So watch for it. As it whips around the sun, if it picks...
Alright, Shalom. And start off by giving all praises, honors, and glories unto Yahbashim Yahshua Makakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, the great millstone that tell me this truth that rule well. Shalom to the elect scattered through the four corners of the earth. My name is Kodash Paya. And as you heard the video with that scientist, the Chinese scientist, if I'm not mistaken, speaking about 31 Atlas, you know, they're saying that there might be a rock coming across, but if it absorbs energy from the sun, that is intelligence or whatever. And really, you know, all throughout generations of the prophets written in the scriptures, seen different shapes and forms of chariots, which are the UFO, so-called UFOs, which are the angels of the Lord vehicles, the angelic vehicles of the Lord, right? The Lord of hosts. And, you know, we're in the times where all throughout the different regions of the world, there's been more sightings, you know, especially now with not only NASA, but the CIA has been spotting orbs, you know, which, you know, we know who that is, around military bases, you know? So, go figure that out. But, yeah, I mean, these ain't no green men, man. Alright? These are the angels of the Lord. And they trying to downplay it, use the scientists, trying to come up with their own little theories and hypotheses. No, they don't understand. Alright? And that's how Esau try to manipulate people. You know? Trying to persuade them into something that sounds good when it's really not. It's plain, it's in the scriptures. There's so many scriptures talking about the angels, you know? But, as a matter of fact, I want to open up one precept. And the Lord is coming back. And how he's coming back on the chariot. On what they call a so-called UFO. Alright. Let's get the book. Matter of fact, let's get 2nd Ezra chapter 13 and verse 6. Real quick. This was a vision of Ezra. Alright. It reads, it says, But I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain, and flew up upon it. But I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not. And after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were so afraid, and yet durst fight. Right? So that's talking about when Yahushua come back in that chariot. You know, Esther saw it and described it as a mountain. Matter of fact, let's start at verse 5. Okay, it says, and after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of the number from the four winds of the heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea. But I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain, and flew up upon it, which, you know, going into the elect, because we're going to be saved through the four corners of the earth when the chariots come back. You know, but it was so big, he referred to it as like a giant mountain, you know? All right. Now, real quick, let's jump down. Because the prophets, when they saw the chariots, they described it the way they was, that the closest thing they can compare it to at the time they saw it, right? Some referred to as horses, some referred to as a mountain like Esther, right? So, you know, Zechariah with a flying scroll, right? So it's different shapes, different forms, you know? But this is verse 13. 2nd Ezra 13, verse 13, it says, and there came much people unto him, whereof some were glad, and some were sorry, and some of them were bound, and other some brought of them that were offered. Then was I sick through a great fear, and I awake and said, Thou hast showed thy servant these wonders from the beginning, and hast counted me worthy that thou shouldest receive my prayer. So that was, you know, Esther seeing that chariot and referred to it as a great mountain. And when it says, and behold, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven, is talking about Yahushua when he comes back with the chariots, with the holy angels. Okay, like it tells you in I believe in Psalms. I believe Psalm 68 and 17, where it speaks about the 20,000s of angels. Alright. But I want to read another scripture real quick in the book of Zechariah, chapter 5, in verse 1. It says, Then I turned and lifted up mine eyes, and looked, and behold, a flying roll. Right? So now, I found this picture on Google. If you were to look up a description of a flying roll, right? Right, it wouldn't be far-fetched as far as this, you know. You know, you got the lights, you got the way it's shaped, you know what I mean? But Esther described it as a flying roll, you know? So it says, and he said unto me, What seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll, the length thereof is 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof 10 cubits. So it's describing the size. Alright? And that was one of the prophets describing, you know, one of the chariots that he had witnessed at that moment. You know? Just like even, I believe, Ezekiel, when he described what he saw, a wheel within a wheel, if I'm not mistaken, you know, and there was even telescopic views of certain orbs that it looked like that. But, you know, that's why Ezekiel described, that's why the prophets, you know, they used the analogy to compare what the chariot looked like at the moment. You know, and not only that, man, you know, I believe even Ronald Reagan, when the president, he was speaking about how if there was to be an outside invasion, that could bring, all these other countries and enemies or whatnot together to form a one world, alliance. So, hey, who's to say, with their Project Bluebeam, with their technology, they could deceive the masses using the sky as a green screen with all these chemtrails or whatnot, to deceive people of something that's outside, you know what I mean? But nevertheless, just reading the scriptures, the Lord is coming back with the angels. Alright, but it's not gonna be the way these elites or these scientists are describing it, cause they really don't know. They could see things, but they don't really spiritually understand, where that's coming from, Matter of fact, let's get the book of Isaiah, because you even have UFOs or angels of the Lord described as clouds, So, there's the book of Isaiah, chapter 66, and verse 15. It says, "For behold, the Lord will come with fire and with his chariots like a whirlwind to render his anger with fury and his rebukes with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many." So, that's why he's coming back with these holy angels. Because even in the book of Daniel, the 12th chapter tells you about Michael the archangel coming back. You got spirits created for vengeance, like it tells you in Sirach 39 and 28. So, don't be amazed, of these things you see in the sky. I mean, look up, for our salvation draweth nigh, yeah. But it's not gonna be for everybody. Alright, so real quick. 2nd Ezra chapter, let's go back to 13. Right? And verse 20. 13 verse 25. Real quick. And we about to close it out. This is the book of 2nd Ezra 13 and 25. It says, "This is the meaning of the vision, whereas thou sawest a man coming up from the midst of the sea, the same, right, as he whom God the highest have kept a great season, which by his own self shall deliver his creature, and he shall order them that are left behind." So with that, let's get another final precept. Revelation chapter 11 verse 12. And it reads, it says, "And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them." Right? You can also read Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, verse around 2? So, come up hither. What is that talking about? It ain't talking about no rapture. It's talking about how the Lord is going to deliver his elect from the four corners of the earth in the midst of their enemies, the 144,000 that believe in the true name and the true doctrine, that has faith in the midst of everything that's coming. So, be not deceived with how they explain certain things that's in the heavens, but just have faith and read in the scriptures what it says itself. So anyway, with that, I hope this was edifying, straight to the point. Until next time, I'm going to say shalom.